Good to go.
All right. All right, let's call this meeting to order. Hopefully everybody got all the handouts here. If you didn't, we can pass more down. But let's try to get moving because we got a lot of agenda items. I'm hopeful that most of them will go quick. One of the first things that we passed around was the last meeting's minutes. Do you want to take a quick look? I got more.
I got two, so there's. Anybody need?
I love
How are you?
You can come sit next to me up front.
I will. I just need some water. Oh, okay. Just gonna go out there and do it.
I think that serves up in the food
Is it water?
truck.
Right.
They're on the right place. Wingman's on the left. Thank you. Okay.
Your $15.
I've got a couple bucks. I'm not thirsty.
There's 2 cases in my car.
Well, I did breast cancer from them. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, yes. Probably. Not to endorse any particular water, but it's actually here. It's springs right there in my hometown.
I move to approve the minutes with the spelling in the left paragraph of the epic mass. Mateo. Just a little typo.
Where was the typo?
The last paragraph.
D, in the last mask.
Yeah, new business D.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. One done. Number 2, I think it was one of the handouts there. Was it one of the handouts, I hope? This?
I don't think we have that.
Okay, I will pass this around. This is just a correspondence, a memo that we sent out, or might send out on our behalf. And while that is going around, people are reading that, maybe Brandon, you can give us an update on EMS education in the region?
Yep, so quickly, just paramedic status update, I guess. Our current class, we're still holding at 11 students. We are quickly approaching the final part of class we test in November. The students are right now beginning or due to begin their capstone experience, which is more like an internship, a true field internship. And once again, they test in November. I also have another class going concurrently, so I have 2 classes going at once. And the enrollment there is 19, and we're only 3 classes in there. We've already had a resident come and kind of help out with the class. So again, resident involvement has been real strong. Dr. Collins has been in, introduced himself. Mary Ann's been in, so they're starting to learn faces. Otherwise, EMS courses in the region. Bruce just began an EMT original last Thursday night. I have an EMT refresher going on Monday evenings here in Chemung County. And we have planned for Steuben, we have an EMT original and refresher planned at Bath Ambulance to begin in December and end in May. And that will be 2 evenings a week, Tuesdays and Thursday evenings. Bath has already graciously accepted to host, and we're just waiting on state approval for that.
Who's the CIC for that right now?
That'll be Bruce. Bruce, and he's probably gonna have help from Mel and John Vargason. They're kind of in their internship phase of their CIC, so they'll probably weigh in as well. Also, we just formalized this the other day. Also coming up in Bath in October 3rd to be specific, at 6 p.m. Ira Davenport and Bath Ambulance are hosting a CME dinner about stroke, and food will be provided, so that'll get people hopefully in seats. But I'll have something more formal mocked up here in the next couple of days, but we just confirmed all that. So.
What time is that?
6 p.m., October 3rd, stroke CMEs in conjunction with Ira and Bath Ambulance. And that's about it.
Do you want to talk a bit about STREMAC County SO?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mike. So Mike and I, Bruce, and a couple others went up to Steuben County 2 weeks ago now, 2-3 weeks ago. Tim was there, Tim kind of helped out. Don and Ross were there from the state. Steuben County Sheriff's Office, Jim Allen, wanted to formally recognize everyone involved in the program, anyone who had any involvement along the way, from getting their approvals, from agency number to getting the class up and running. So everybody was recognized that day. Obviously, the deputies that took part. It was a good time, good morning, and great recognition of 13 trained and certified EMS providers now on the street for Steuben County. So we'll have another go around with them starting in late October. I'll be back up there at least one day a week doing a new group. So Jim Allen would like to see 3 groups trained. So his hopes is that not everyone, he can't really require everyone to do it, but he hopes to have the majority of his corrections officers and deputies as EMTs in the next year and a half. So, but Class 1 was a great success. Good 100% pass rate. Scores were excellent. So many 80s, a few 80s, so grades were amazing. But again, a good group, captive group, dedicated. So a very easy group to instruct. Really, it was a model group. It was almost too easy some days, but. Can't forget anything.
We'll get to that.
Can I just mention, this might be later, but October 4th and 5th is our annual
Yes.
Concepts in Trauma Conference up at Tioga Downs. So we have 3 big name speakers coming in. David Gibbett has been there before. He's actually a lawyer from California who just represents firefighters, EMS, and nurses. So he's a great resource on that. Talks about documentation. He's also going to do a little bit on provider burnout and like suicide and things like that. So that's going to be good. And then we also have another surgeon coming from the Midwest who's a trauma surgeon. He's called, his address on the web is thetraumadoc.com. So if you check him out, he's really good too, so that's going to be great. So we really have some big names coming, so let people know. It's out on Facebook. It's early this year. We're used to being more towards November, so it's kind of getting screwed up on the timeline, but it's T-minus 1 month from today, so please come be involved. And also, lastly, I wanted to say that great work on the side of Chemung County and Bradford County, and the 2 agencies, both ARNID and Robert Packer, doing Stop the Bleed in the area. We've had several great saves of patients who have come in with tourniquets on with mangled extremities from motorcycles, of course, because it's summertime. And so I just think kudos to everybody who's out there teaching it, because it really is saving a lot of lives. So thank you very much.
Date, time, and cost on that?
What's
Sorry?
that?
Date, time, and cost?
Oh, on Concepts in Trauma. So the date is October 4th. We have 2 pre-conferences going. One is going to be a legal boot camp, and one is also ITLS, the hybrid version of that. They're going to do online portion, and then they'll get the hands-on when they come in. The cost on each of those is $80 each. I think it's $110 total for the ITLS. And then Saturday, this includes Friday evening of Con Ed, and all day Saturday ends up being around 9.5 hours of Con Ed. And that, I think for the EMS provider is, got me on the spot, I think it's $75. So it's pretty cheap for that amount of Con Ed. So, and clearly a great venue, so they all like to go out Friday and
Yeah.
but it's good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, our diversion policy, coming back around, that was in your handout packet. A little bit edited from feedback from the state, but essentially was the policy that I sent out a couple months ago. It did not get much feedback from our local partners at all. The only suggested changes I received from them were, number one, could the policy include specific mention of if a doctor is ill or injured and unable to perform their duties, would that be a reason to go on diversion? And number two, if there were inadequate nurses, would that be a reason to go on diversion? Number two, it seemed pretty clear to me that the state was not okay with that being a reason to go on diversion.
Number one is out too.
My suspicion was that it would be out as well.
There should be backup within the hospital disasters and stuff.
So I did not add either of those to this policy, unless any of you feel strongly that they should be added.
This policy doesn't exclude that. I mean, it's left it open, so if there was a situation, if I'm at 2:00 in the morning and I keel over from a cardiac arrest, and they have to go on diversion for a couple hours to get back up in, they could do that. It doesn't exclude it. It doesn't say you can only divert with these situations. It just, it leaves it general, so I don't think you need to include it in the policy.
Hopefully that would be an extremely rare situation.
Hopefully
that
our
would be-
providers are not dropping.
Yeah.
Especially our nocturnes.
You can always call it
Right.
Hopefully your
Transfer
staff
to
will
another
resuscitate
facility.
you so you can get back to work.
That's the one.
Now we get back to it.
The other question on this policy that Donnie just brought up, in the who you need to notify. The policy as it's written says hospitals must notify transporting agencies in counties in Pennsylvania, and we're not sure if we can legally require that notification. We can recommend and suggest it, but I guess, Don, that's a question for you. Can we require them to talk out of state?
That would actually be a question for the hospital part, to be honest with you. Because we don't regulate the EMS agencies in the state of Pennsylvania. I think if you wanted to protect yourself,
Courteously,
what's it?
you put some sort of like courtesy, like where
Right,
you courtesy words, like.
Wouldn't it make more sense to, instead of just physically saying notify Bradford and Tioga County, that you have to notify all transporting ambulance services that regularly transport to your hospital, and then that kind of covers it?
I think that would be fine. I think we specifically wanted this verbiage in at our last meeting, but I think it would be totally fine to.
Well, I think that if you nail it down that tight,
Yeah.
there are a lot of ambulances that aren't staffed. I think notifying 911 centers is appropriate, but where Bradford and Tioga counties are specifically listed here, remember that as you travel around the perimeter of our region, there are ambulances from Yates County,
Sure.
Tompkins County, Allegheny County, Livingston County, that also routinely transport to hospitals that may use this diversion policy. So maybe the best bet is
I think it'd be very reasonable to
appropriate.
strike out the parenthetical part there and be appropriate transporting ambulance services, and
I think that's
Well,
a great idea.
911.
I would prefer to say the dispatch agency for the appropriate ambulances that transport to the facility.
so right now it's two separate points. It's each county 911 dispatch center and appropriate transporting ambulance services,
I think we should leave it the way it is, except
except
Parentheses,
for parentheses.
yes.
Because it seems sensible and
yeah, it makes sense to do that, because if you're on diversion, you want to contact them immediately.
are there any objections to making?
Would you?
I just want to make sure you understand that. So we're going to leave each county 911 dispatch center.
Right.
And then take out the parentheses after that? Or, and then are we going to put anything in there to say,
Consider notification of surrounding counties as appropriate?
or
Yeah, I think that's,
notify all dispatch centers that, I don't even know. how to-
That's appropriate.
I just leave it as
Yeah.
appropriate.
Okay.
Wait, so you're taking out the county
The parentheses.
identification part? Yeah. Is that what you're taking out?
Due to this potential issue of, we can't require them to talk to people outside of our scope.
So just shortening it up, each county 911 dispatch center and the appropriate transporting ambulance services.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Please, of course.
The reason that we're having an issue with this, was it brought up by somebody, or is it just, we're trying to hit something off before it comes about?
I think it's more of a avoid a potential issue.
So we didn't get any pushback from the hospital saying, no, we're not gonna call Pennsylvania?
My understanding is there wasn't much
They
feedback at all.
didn't say much at all.
So, or I was just curious if we're trying to create a problem, or maybe there isn't going to be one.
Can I offer the question of who cares? If they don't want to, so, yeah, you put in a policy that says, please contact these particular agencies, and they say, well, you can't tell us to call Pennsylvania, all right, fine. You understand what I'm saying? But I think what you're doing is you're providing a level of guidance to them to say, these are the ones that we feel strongly you should be communicating with, at least.
Maybe
Unless
say
you put it-
consider,
I
just
guess
say consider.
Right.
I would put them in, only because I think lots of times from a, like, maybe this is not what I say, but from an administrative standpoint, they'd be like, well, you just have to call a 911 center, and then they call the least, they do the least.
Well, yeah, I guess, I would prefer that they call each 911 center within our region.
Yeah.
However, like I said, it doesn't matter which border you go to, there are other 911 centers that would be appropriate, and we just can't list all of them.
No, but I would make it the highest bar you can, because otherwise I don't think you're gonna make that bar.
So if we use the phrasing, you must notify each county, each of the 3 county 911 dispatch centers, and parentheses, as appropriate, notify neighboring county dispatch centers, does that
Yeah,
fit the bill and not exclude anybody, but
In one of the comment periods, someone originally had stipulated that, and that's why we put that in there, just to refresh your memory. They stipulated sure notify Pennsylvania.
But I don't know that we have the authority to make up, I don't know that we have the authority to make any other hospital notify out of state.
We just threw that in as someone that stipulated.
somebody. And then,
Was there any thought of putting in the contact information?
I was just gonna say,
yeah, I think that was the plan, to include
Like I
the
did,
There's
reference
there's
document.
another page, once we determine who we're going to contact, and we also put out a note to each one of them, asking them how they want to be contacted.
Because without 911, you're only gonna get one.
No, you have to run across the border.
Shares from a landline on a cell phone, right, bounce off the wrong tower.
And then do we think that appropriate transporting ambulance services is sufficient without the parentheses there?
I think so. Because what you're trying to get at there, you're trying to get at.
Anybody who might show up at your door.
Services versus calling the volunteers, that's what you're getting at, right?
Anybody who might show up at your door needs to know.
So you're gonna call every single one? They're gonna be responsible to call every single one of those?
Yeah.
Because I just did codes for our hospital, and that's a lot of agencies. So I don't know how that's, if you consider that if you do it through 911, then they're notified.
Right.
But to call each of them is gonna be a lot of work.
Can it happen like like a phone tree format where they contact 911 and then 911 sends it out to the agencies?
No, just understand that, well, Steuben County, there are 21 ambulances,
Yeah.
most of which don't have anybody sitting by telephone.
No, but don't they do, like, it comes through our cell phone?
Well, so that's the point, instead of the hospital trying to contact each of those 21 agencies, the point of contact is the county
Dispatch.
911 center.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like, the 911 operator then blows it out to all the agencies that are,
Um,
to their cells?
Most likely what's gonna happen is if they get a call, they're gonna advise them when they go en route, be advised.
Oh, so they wait.
So Corning
Right.
Corning Hospital is on diversion for you know,
So
if
we look at
Scan.
this, if we look at this, at least within our region, there's really only 2 ambulance services that have their own dispatch center, and maybe even possibly one, which is Irway. So AMR possibly could be the other one. Why don't we just get rid of everything and just say no, and get rid of 911 and get rid of appropriate ambulance services and just put in there one line that says notify the appropriate ambulance dispatch centers. And then that would cover both 911, and then on the second page, when you have your listing of the and then you can have your listing of all the ambulance dispatch centers, you could put Chemung County 911, you know, Steuben County 911, Schuyler County 911, then go off to Irwin Ambulance, AMR, and then go off to the surrounding counties as your phone tree, and then maybe we may bring this down from 20 phone calls to maybe 5 or 6. Which seems to me to be a little bit more reasonable. Right. Instead of, you know, picking both 911 centers and ambulance services and then have them just the appropriate dispatch centers.
That
That
seems
seems more reasonable, because if you ask someone in an administrative position to make 20 phone calls and this is going on, it's not gonna happen.
Well, and if it does happen, it's not gonna happen in a timely fashion because they have greater things to worry about than
Right.
notify the ambulance services. To me, it's just make it as easy as possible.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's why I think
I assume some of these notifications are gonna be fax because of the
Right.
form. That's what we,
Fax
that's what we used to do. Because sometimes
Sometimes
it might be
a
a limited,
notification.
it might be a limited
possible.
service open, you might be open to STEMIs, let's say, but not anything else.
Is it possible, let me ask you this, is it possible for the program agency with their faxing and their telephone system to set up a mass fax? So say like the ARNet goes on diversion for whatever reason, I know in our phone and fax system at Airways, you can call in with a specific number and it goes out and then it mass faxes to already predefined fax numbers.
Rick, that doesn't require somebody to physically be here at 2 AM if Kevin has his heart attack.
It doesn't in our system.
Okay.
So, you know, if you,
Yeah.
we have a specific, you know, a phone number, I think it's like a phone number and then you add like the extension to the end of the fax when you do it and it goes through and it drops down and then it goes to a fax list and it faxes everything out to that list. It's run through a computer system.
the
So,
problem with faxes is nobody reads it anymore.
well,
so I mean,
one
it's
goes
true.
in the dispatch center, I think, and our office goes to a copy machine and a work
I
center.
really believe 3 phone calls to the 3 911 centers,
Yeah.
and then if we want to include the 2 commercial ambulances.
Well, I wouldn't even say commercial ambulances, anybody who dispatches themselves is who should be notified.
Don't forget from now.
Well, wouldn't Chemung County, wouldn't you get that notification from Chemung County? Because I mean, you gotta think simple during this, because
Right.
this is like the worst time of their life right now. They're in a natural disaster, and now we're asking them to do 25 phone calls. So the 911 center would notify you.
Well, that would be up to the 911 directors, I mean, you know. So I'm all for making this as simple as it possibly can. If you can drop it down from 6 phone calls to 3 phone calls, that's even better. You know, the point is just getting the regularly transporting ambulance services notified.
That's a 911 conversation with the 3 guys, because there was discussion over how many calls can they make at their capacity. You know,
Depends on what's going on.
right,
I mean, if we're in the middle of a ice storm and, you know, power outages and, you know, we're taking 300 calls an hour, we're gonna have very limited ability to be able to call. I mean, a lot of the times it's just call to the dispatch center over the radio. Be advised we're notified Corning Hospital is on diversion.
It makes the most sense if you put that phone call with the 911 center. They know it. They dispatch an ambulance on a 911 call. All
They're gonna
the
sound
dispatcher's
right
gotta
off.
do is say, be advised your nearest hospital is, or be advised Corning Hospital is currently on diversion.
Right.
Boom, done.
Which,
But I think the point that maybe some people are getting at is not all patients that are transported by ambulance go through the 911 system. So I think for the commercial entities or those that regularly transport non-emergency, non-911 system patients, you know, I think there's a level of importance for them to have a notification.
We have nursing homes that refuse to call 911, so.
And I would hope they would do that for the air, just because for some reasons, it doesn't always come out of the 911 center, it comes from someone's pocket phone.
Which interestingly, that whole Guthrie remodel and new entrance thing, I understand, came through on Facebook.
It was sent out to the agencies too. There was a letter sent out.
We got the letter. But I mean, not to belabor this, but to me, it just makes sense to get rid of those two small bullet points and just put in one bullet point and just say notify. And then on the second page, we can put the suggested list of people to call. And make that list as short as possible.
Or you can build a communication system, whether you're talking about faxing or emailing, that once you activate with let's say you activate with the 3 911s, once we build that list and they shoot it out one time. So it's 3 phone calls and then 1 email, fax, whatever it is that you guys have the capability to do.
I mean, that's the mechanics
So
of
if
it.
you do a listserv
So
or
that's,
something,
we can figure out the mechanics of it later, I think. If we can come to an agreement that the right people to notify are, as Rick suggests, anybody who dispatches ambulances in our region, does that seem?
So I think your wording should be each dispatch center of the appropriate transport ambulance service, period.
I think that's appropriate.
Each dispatch center for appropriate
Transporting ambulance service. So take out county 911.
Yep,
Each dispatch center, and then take out all your other stuff.
got it.
Of the appropriate transporting ambulance service. And you're done.
Okay, good. Fantastic.
And then we make the list, and that's it.
Love it. Any other thoughts on this policy?
So will you take off the lower ones, the Southern Tier REMAC and all regional hospitals and specialty care facilities?
I think,
Or are they gonna be making those phone calls too?
I think definitely notification has to come to the Department of Health because they want to know when this policy is being put into effect. And I think we probably need to know as well. I believe the regional hospitals was a request of them to have that in because they want hospitals to be arranging with, well, if we can't take care of you, this place can. And that was one of Dr. Young's expectations of this policy.
They need to be prepared to take additional patients.
And so just like the specialty care facilities, like we had a huge problem with the last time that this all happened. None of our primary care facilities knew anything, and we were sending people, trying to send people for semi-urgent CAT scans. I mean, you don't think about it, but primary care office, lots of people come to us with their crushing chest pain, abdominal pain. You know, they just calm because they think if they can just calm and I can tell them they're okay, then they can just go home. So, you know, you'd be, right? So, like, you know, on a daily basis, we see frequently a lot of people that will be like, okay, you're stable enough to go by car, to go right from here to the hospital and get your urgent, we've called, and, you know, but, so I agree, like, I would hope that the primary care group should be like.
But don't you call and refer them in?
We do, but we couldn't, like, that day, all the communications were down, and we didn't know for like an hour or two that, like, we had no services at Corning Hospital. Like, and we had no information.
I guess in my mind, if a primary care patient needed to be seen, in their words, semi-urgently at a specialty care center, maybe in the interest of keeping things brief, maybe they should be calling 911 and the ambulance would know the answer to that and make the appropriate transport decisions.
Well, so we usually don't call 911 unless the patient has agreed to go on ambulance, because we're not going to.
Oh, if you've got a person with chest pain,
No. Well, this gets awfully more complex than, I mean, as far as like people who are, so, because they're standing in front of you, right, you're the doctor, you know, and so, no, I'm not going by ambulance. Okay. You know, you have a special.
I don't know how much authority we can have over things that don't involve EMS. I think
That's
that
fine.
may be the stumbling block there.
Okay.
But I totally agree with what you're saying.
That's fine, I get it, I know.
I mean, that's something we could look at if we're able to build some sort of mass communication system.
So,
through the.
yeah, if it's like in there, great, I understand, it's probably, maybe it's not in the purview of this committee, but
There
From a
was-
practical-
There was a
from-
text message alert that went out to everybody that cared.
that'd be amazingly helpful. So, but from a practical standpoint, you know, you have a box full of patients and
It's like a great grant opportunity. Notification system, there you go.
See what Dr. Camp can do.
We used to have that program, the STAR program,
Yeah.
and it went out, phone calls went out, and emails went out also.
So Dylan, I make a motion to approve this policy as we have changed it.
I was hoping you'd make that.
Put it to
motion.
bed. Put it to bed.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, that will get typed up, and
Is that the job?
this is the copy that I played with.
It's accurate.
If you can read my chicken scratch, it's accurate. If Karen can read it, yes. All right, QI status update. We were talking a little bit before the meeting about QI, QA in our region, and the approach that I think I would like to take, and these fine gentlemen would like to take, would be to try to have a more collaborative approach to QI that will involve the council's QI subcommittee with some members of this committee, along with the program agency working together towards common goals rather than trying to have 3 separate QI processes. We are waiting to get guidance from the state, which maybe January we'll hear what the final word is from the Bureau on state QI goals. Is that a-
Oh, yes, maybe,
Maybe? Fingers crossed?
maybe,
Okay.
hopefully. That's the word, hopefully.
I wasn't aware we were trying to do 3 separate things. But I did have a couple of discussions with Peter Brody last month, as we discussed regional coverage and the potential expense of doing something like that. And that's, the image trend is cost prohibitive. It's about $19,000 a year. However, the image trend rep referred me to Peter, and I had a nice conversation with Peter. Apparently the state has some latitude. They'd like to open up the image trend system and be able to offer more to the regions. So Peter was going to go back and have some discussions on the bureau level, and then we agreed to be able to come together again and kind of kick around some ideas to see if we could jump on the state's system, because they've got layers that they can build into the state bridge that would give us the ability to do what it is that we've been talking about for the last couple of years without spending $19,000 a year.
So just a couple of things on that. For those that don't know, Peter Brody is our informatics guy for the State Department of Health. Quite frankly, a brilliant informatics type person, but he's responsible for all the programming of the Image Trend Bridge, which is the bridge that takes electronic patient care records from EMS agencies to the state system and then subsequently into the federal NEMSIS system. The state is moving all providers to NEMSIS 3, and there is access at the program agency level currently to view some of that data. So, I mean, there is ability to pull that data for the regional level through the program agencies. And that was NEMSIS 2 as well, that element was there. So you can certainly pull that data in that circumstance. As far as agencies getting into image trend, there is definitely a discussion about, providing a pathway for that.
The idea that we kicked around was the ability for regional medical director to have access, the ability for area QI coordinators, pretty much as we laid out when we started talking about this. And he felt that there is the ability with the state system to be able to do that. And possibly for us to be the guinea pig to do some of that.
I believe currently we can grant access for Dr. Keller for the region.
Fantastic.
However,
More things to do.
limited, right now, I think as it was originally set up, it's a limited data set.
Right, well, NEMSIS 2 is open, data set, NEMSIS 3 has opened the door quite a bit.
Okay. As I think we talked about at our last meeting, Dr. Morrow will be stepping down at some point in the not too distant future, and we'd like to hold a little get-together to thank him for all of his hard work on behalf of EMS in the region. I will coordinate with him a day and time that are good for him, and I will let everybody know.
Is he leaving the area or staying?
I don't know if he's 100% sure what he's doing yet. It's not that he told me.
He's a grandbaby that just moved to the area, so he might stay a little longer than thought.
Can I make a suggestion that we have this event with our December meetings? Or you want it independent of a meeting?
We had originally thought to make it an independent, like an evening event, but
As a party?
With adult beverages.
indeed.
At your own expense.
I'm fine with that. Do I have a reason to get a babysitter? Yes.
In terms of agency medical director coverage, I want to recognize Dr. Halland, Dr. Lincoln Heil, and Dr. Bramer, who's not here, for all of their efforts in stepping up and gobbling up lots and lots of agencies that were looking for medical directors. So I think, Mike, we've got to be close.
We have probably 4 or 5 more that we're looking for. They're low-lying transporting agencies in Steuben County. The Harmonies and the whatever.
Hornby is non-transporting.
They're a first responder.
Tuscarora is one.
That's fine.
Still looking.
Okay, you can see that he's still listening to this.
Have you been to Tuscarora yet?
As a child.
It's a lot different as an adult.
It's-
Addison's the other one I think we're looking for.
I think I rode a 4-wheeler.
Everybody
Does that
does.
sound right?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Maybe
Four-wheelers
snowmobile
versus-
as well.
Yeah.
Be about right.
There's a fire department I go to.
Like, if you've been to the fire department, then that's one step closer to heaven.
It's pretty much been there.
STREMAC committee duties. I can't recall, there was a document from the state of what we're supposed to be doing, and we're doing most of the things we're supposed to except QI, yeah. So hopefully when the council gets its QI committee reformed, we can work together on that.
And I believe in May, we talked about a representative from the REMAC to come in and help guide that process along.
Is anybody interested? Don't all volunteer at once. Only one lucky person can be this representative.
Who's not here?
Rob!
Rob, yeah.
You can ask me in January.
Ask me January. Okay.
I just have to make it to January.
Hopefully we'll have a little more idea what Peter can do for us in regional, our access to regional data, so.
When we know what we're asking someone to volunteer for. Sounds good. Okay, moving on to new business. The new ALS and BLS protocols are now out in the wild, but our providers can't use them until we say they can use them. So there's kind of A and B here are for us to, as a region, say we want to continue participating in the collaborative protocol process. And then B, figure out how we're going to roll them out to our providers, including an educational component. And I know that Frank Brzezowski is hard at work on trying to put together educational material and cobbling together. Other regions around us have videos that they've put together, as well as I think there's work on a Q bank, maybe. from the collaborative group, from the group that put the Q back together last time?
Yes.
Dr. Syracuse, yes.
Yes.
Mulder?
Yes, Chris Walker.
10 points.
And the other doctor.
Oh,
This is good, guys.
they're regional, they're regional medical director?
No, he's not from, he's from down, he's got his EMS, that, his own organization, I
Hmm.
forget. He produces the videos with Volker.
What, Chris?
So I
State has problems.
I would suggest that we continue to use the collaborative protocols, because I don't want us to have to tackle writing new protocols for our region.
I second that.
Fred? Any discussion on that?
Probably a good idea to review them, see what the different changes are. And then have it all emailed to everybody so that the next time we meet, we can.
As I recall, there weren't a whole lot of there weren't really any changes to the advanced life support portion. The BLS life support, or the basic life support portion, kind of is non-negotiable. The state has the authority to set the BLS protocols.
So we're rubber stamp them.
So we
Pretty
would
much.
rubber stamp that part, but the collaborative protocols,
Which I changed.
they've changed to have their BLS part in line with the BLS protocols. And I think the other change they made were like including Tylenol and ibuprofen, something like that. It would certainly not significant changes that they discussed.
Yeah, the big retooling was basic life support to, well, the state had to bring the statewide BLS protocols in line with the collaborative, because once the collaborative went out, everybody everybody just kind of started following the collaborative protocol on the BLS level. The state said, we'll back up, you don't have the authority to do that region by region. So the new statewide BLS protocols really are written to match the collaborative protocols with a few changes.
It replaces 1604. And the state's providing a document that discriminates between the two, I believe. Is that still in the?
Yeah, I mean, the other caveat is the training piece. So beginning August 1st, people have the ability to utilize the protocols, but there had to be regimented training in place. The state is in the process of developing the training. It's developed, but they're going to push it out on a learning management system that's in beta right now. And that everybody will have the requirement to complete. But yes, the state is actually going to be pushing out a learning management system online, so it'll be pretty cool for providers across the state.
So from a practical standpoint, so since I'm taking over a few of these now, so like for these fire departments that are BLS, what do we have to do to make sure that they are in compliance with their training?
So today, if they've had no additional training, they should be utilizing the previous BLS protocol set that has been out for a number of years.
Right.
You can choose as a region to develop your own training data set today and issue it and such. And when the state's LMS system comes out, you'll have to still do that training. But if you wanted to use the new protocols or the updated protocols in advance of that, you could do that. Or you could wait for the state's LMS system to come out where the providers have the ability to take that training, and then at that point they can begin to use all the new
Do you
protocols.
have a sense of when?
I think tomorrow we'll have a better sense on we have a conference call tomorrow with all the program agencies. My understanding is we'll have a better update, but as of the last conference call, program agency conference call, they were pushing a beta out to one particular region. And from there, they expected sometime this fall, because the goal is to have everyone functioning on the new protocol set by December 31st.
So would somebody come out to the fire department for a training night, or did they all do it online, or?
It would be online.
It's all online?
It would be online, yes. Certainly, as a medical director, you can make a
So for
higher
efficiency,
requirement.
For for efficiency's sake.
Right, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
just wait, and so once that comes out, do you have like?
Not the best answer, but efficiency's sake says.
Right, right. 'cause, yeah.
Well, because in some regions, what some regions have done is they've created their own, because they want to get their people active and functioning
Okay,
on the new protocol set. Well, with the understanding, they're still gonna have to complete some level of the state's LMS once it comes out.
okay,
Because it's gonna be a required, basically a required checkbox
right.
that they're gonna pull a data report down from.
So once
To
that
verify.
state thing, once the state comes out, does that, you send us a website, you send us a link, you send that? to
That'll
us?
be widely distributed, yes, ma'am.
Oh, sorry.
It'll
to
make
be-
your life so much easier.
I know, yeah,
So-
sorry to be just like, I
No, no,
wanna
no.
know like a pragmatic.
I wish I had better,
Like, what
this
do
is,
I-
the statewide, a statewide LMS system has been the dream of the new director, bureau director, since he started, even before he started. And we're happy that it's coming, it's like anything, it's a slower process
That's fine, I just
than
wanna
what we would
know.
like to see.
I don't want the agencies to be confused on which protocols we're using, because again, that letter came out and said, as of August 1st, we're using these new protocols, but you gotta take the training, and then now you can't get the training because the LMS system isn't up and running yet. So there's a lot of confusion out there with a lot of the cores.
So I think it makes sense for our region to say, we're gonna stay on the old protocols until the LMS is live and ready for you to use, and then you have 60 or 90 days, or whatever we feel is the appropriate time frame there to get everybody in compliance with it.
So
I
are you gonna, so are you gonna send a letter out to that statement that Mike can send to me, that I can send to my cores, so that everybody's clear on what we're doing in the region?
I think that's a brilliant thing.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
But I think that, not knowing exactly when this LMS is gonna come out in relation to when our next meeting is, I would suggest that we provisionally adopt the new protocols pending the arrival of the appropriate training material, with the expectation then that our providers will have completed it 60 days, within 60 days of its availability.
So, I was gonna let you finish that, I apologize. The only caveat is I have the Dear Administrator letter up, in case you have not seen it, it's here and available. I can forward it to you, it's on our website, but it does state that all EMS agencies must complete the required training verification and implement the protocols no later than December 31st. So I understand that we have not done our part yet, but I'm just saying that's what is in the current letter. If it's going to pass beyond that, certainly I would expect that the letter would be issued from our central office leadership. But I'm just throwing it out there so that there is a current deadline in place by December 31st.
Okay, so let's use that then.
Second.
Keep things nice and simple.
I'll second.
No discussion, huh? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Fred? All right. And then I have some new PAD applications here from the Clemens Center, from Chilson Wilcox Auto Dealer, and from the Parish of the Most Holy Name of Jesus. And I'm told that they are all complete and look good, so I think that that's just a rubber stamp endorsement from us.
Actually, they go to,
We go both places.
Out of curiosity, who's the rental director involvement in Chilson Wilcox?
They have a third party.
They have-
Those
They made a deal with a doctor for our
I'm just curious who it is.
Let's see. This is,
what kind of car?
you are on the Clemens Center.
Yeah.
Chilson Wilcox is Dr. Danes, Joanne Danes.
She's with, it'll say doesn't say the agency she's with. It's one of those groups that goes out and does AEDs.
Okay.
Buy an AED, but you get the
Commercial.
Alert Link Emergency Response Ambulance Service.
Yes.
so is she licensed to practice in the state of New York?
She does have a license number.
New York City.
That's okay. We ran into that one time with a PhD application.
And she does appear to live in Wisconsin. She does have a New York State license.
Do we need a chair?
Those are go. Mike, those are the forward on me.
Yes.
Okay.
No, they actually aren't approved, they're just accepted and forwarded. The regions don't have the authority to approve or disapprove PDA.
So, I'm giving this to the council.
We have it back.
Okay, good. I'm getting rid of it then.
Keep your mind.
Yeah, don't give it to Donnie.
Onward and upward.
We have PAD updates, which again, I told are all complete. We have the Watkins Glen Central School District, Wayland Cohocton School District, Corning City Fire Department, John G. Ullman Associates, and the Hilton Garden Inn. Oh, wait, these are not, do they need a physician license number on there? I don't see. They don't?
We can look those up.
Okay.
Why don't they need a physician?
We can be, this is ID number. He's looking for it.
No, the New York State physician license number.
Yeah, I can look those up.
Okay. I hope this person, because they live in New York. But I think that
These are all people.
this one has one, that one has one.
Correct.
So, I would approve the ones that do and provisionally approve the ones that don't, pending the appropriate number being put on there. Isn't this fun, everybody? E, these different two sheets. The DOH 4362 update. What is that? Because I have a different E here. I have the medical director verifications. Is that
Same thing.
It is the same thing. Okay, good. So medical director verifications. I have Corning City Fire Department, Woodhull Ambulance, and the Bath VA Medical Center, which is really just they're being polite by complying with our region.
Federal territory, it's.
No, I mean, that's nice of them.
It's just courtesy, yeah. They really,
They volunteer.
They do, they voluntarily comply and they strive to comply, quite frankly, and they are very much in compliance.
And they're a very great partner.
And I will tell you from a disaster preparedness side of the house, that's also part of our world, they are huge assets to have in this region.
Absolutely.
The stuff that they offered us when there was the potential disastrous concert thing that was gonna go on. The stuff that Jimmy and his crew over there offered up to us was just absolutely amazing. So,
We've used them down here for our planning in Chemung County.
yeah.
Their mass casualty buses and everything. We use those.
And they just got a brand new command post until I saw the
Yeah.
state fair the other day.
They're actually gonna do a show and tell down
Yeah.
here, one Tuesday in October.
Yep.
We're trying to coincide it with the paramedic class and the EMT class. He's gonna leave them out here for a day, so, and we're gonna invite all the agencies that wanna come in, and Jimmy's gonna give them a tour, and
It's awesome.
so everybody knows what's
a
going
show
on.
and tell us what? I'm sorry.
Show and tell for all of his assets up there, his mobile clinic, command center, what else do you have up there?
Dual use vehicles.
Yeah.
He's got a bunch
They've
of,
got a bunch of really nice equipment that he wants to park for a day or two, and we'll get those dates out.
Yeah, they've got really nice mass casualty buses, you know, think back to the MASH.
Yeah.
But think of a modern bus that
They
that
take-
they can
These
hold.
is when Deb Wagner did her New York Hope.
Right, yes.
They were
Yeah.
like incredible.
I think they take 7 stretcher patients and 14 wheelchairs if I remember.
They've got one that'll take 12 structures.
Yeah.
Some nice stuff.
You can email when they're gonna do their
Sure.
show.
Yep.
So, we're good on those. Then, F and G here, talking about medical control. And we have a wonderful packet of Corning physicians that are now approved to do medical control,
Yay.
which I think makes them the only hospital that is 100% compliant at this point. As of today.
As of today.
We had a policy that we put together last year, the year before, maybe, 2017. That is supposed to be being followed by all of our hospitals. It is not. Barnet is close to in compliance, but I'm not sure that all of our new hires came through, and nobody else is participating. So, A, get some teeth behind. Do we have teeth that we can put behind this? Are there teeth
Keep behind what?
behind us insisting that anybody who wants to provide online medical direction be in compliance with our policy?
I believe it's listed in the public health law.
It is. It is.
Yeah. So as a result, then yes, in that circumstance you do. So, I mean, my recommendation to you would be to send, if you're
For one.
correct, I would send a letter on behalf of the REMAC referencing the section of the law and CC the Department of Health.
Okay,
Department of you.
let's do it.
Do they need a deadline of some sort to?
Always have that, it's good.
December 31st, we're gonna stick with one deadline.
So the January meeting will be busy.
It'll be the best.
We're not.
Bring stats.
So what happens if they're not in compliance by December 31st?
Then they can't provide medical control or direction.
And I think you have to give them that, you know, as far as this will be the follow-up situation. Obviously, I mean, you guys.
And then they can't be a 402 facility,
Correct.
right? So that'll hurt them big time.
Yeah, that turns into a whole
Then
other.
they'd have to go into Georgia.
Touche.
For the record, Lynn, I did not say that. Put that on the video for our hospital people back that'll watch this video. I did not say that.
Is there like an online test for that? Because I had done something years ago, you know.
Yeah, there is a
Credential for that.
paper test.
But it's under the 2017 protocols,
Right.
just to keep that in mind.
Yeah,
We
2017.
don't have any protocols yet. We have them,
Wait, right. Just a clarify.
though. There will be a new test.
Is it possible to arrange to have that online? So people can, that's one way of tracking it without, say it's in paper.
Yes.
There you go.
And then you can send email out to all the providers, they can just go online and take it. You don't have to worry about loose papers, misplaced in the file.
And that was one of the goals of purchasing your subscription to learning management system that we have, was so that those kind of things could be done online and tracked.
We have a workaround local, but that LMS regionally has been put on hold, encouraging the state.
We're still spending money on it.
Well, it's escrow, it's not, we didn't send anybody, you know, nobody's spent money. You know, it's setting. It may still go through. It depends on, I believe, on how successful the state's on this and how far they want to open it up. The
So it'd be
discussion is
really
how
nice to
far.
just tie it in at the same time.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to only have one, because I've only looked for,
They don't know their capacity yet.
Correct. But, so, we're gonna use our state teeth and try to get everybody in compliance with this.
Does that apply to everybody, every physician providing medical control, including residents?
Yes.
So the residents will have to do
Well,
this?
so
as long as
technically, the
residents-
residents aren't providing medical control. There should not be a situation in which the resident is answering the radio without an attending physician present as well.
so what happens?
Would you agree with that, Dr. Bowe?
Yeah, that is correct, because they can't have medical control until they have their license, which is, for most of them, not till they're 30 years.
So they're operating under your list.
Correct. Yeah.
So, okay.
But we.
Whenever, when you call the department, whenever they call the department, there is an attending.
It's just,
Or answering medical control questions.
I'll discuss later.
PAs do provide medical control, and that
That's in
is
there.
in the state policy.
So there's one in that packet that is a medical provider for credentialing, just in case.
I guess the one question that we may want to revisit in our policy is there a point at which a mid-level should be transferring the medical control authority to a physician? And if so, how do we build that in?
What would that situation look like?
I don't know.
Like,
Can mid-level?
I would ask that question.
right.
Because we get that, we
Mid-level.
consistently get that question here quite a bit, kind of mid-level provide
And they
X, Y, Z. Right.
I know
There's
there's
always,
essentially has.
right, there's
levels
always these
without anybody else.
one-off or what-if questions. Can the mid-level approve my narcotics order? And so there's all these kind of, tendrils that come out from it, so.
Well, the answer is yes.
Correct.
certainly from the state, it seems clear that they can.
Okay.
Although it's a little unclear from this, physicians have to have ACLS and ATLS to provide medical direction. But the state does not require emergency medicine boarded physicians to maintain those certifications for any other reason. I guess that's a question for you, sir. Do I need ACLS and ATLS to provide online medical direction even though I don't need them for any other reason in the state of New York?
If the law says so, yes, I guess.
Our policy is different.
Different.
Our policy is different, but the state's policy says
I'm just trying to read it. Whoops. I feel like I'm gonna get lynched by a room full of doctors here.
I think
Maybe nobody ever found out. Right.
Duplication of
Is that-
services.
You won't have
involved
that.
is
Yeah.
not-
Kevin, we'll have to call Kevin for
Kevin.
that's it.
While you're looking that up, how does EMS know if they're actually talking to somebody who is credentialed to
The
be?
assumption is that you're speaking as a credentialed provider.
That's the assumption, because a lot of hospitals
That-
use the
that
nurse, that's who they're
If
talking
they're
to.
answering the phone, then they are
The
credentialed.
assumption is that you're providing.
Well, if you ask for medical interest, right? Not
If it's a normal
not
If you
report.
ask for medical command.
If you ask for asking for medical, within reason, there should be a physician with an earshot saying, yeah, approve that order.
Because I think the one that I just,
They're not.
You just
Like
get
some
the-
agencies
so
don't.
I think the one that I
have
looked at from New York
applications.
State did have,
Or some
or
providers have
or
determined
some
Yeah,
sort of
it's- That's hit or
equivalent
miss.
educational requirements, i.e.
It's actually harder
Yeah,
in
so-
Pennsylvania because.
Then
They're very
regulated.
Whatever
Requires
says. So whatever 40519 says, is what it is. This was written in 2011. So the answer could be,
Because all
the
the.
board certification thing has only been around for a dozen years or so, correct? As far as the exemption to ACLS and stuff? You know?
I don't know specifically.
Because I remember when the exemption came in, but so that had to be in.
I think it was longer, it was,
Was it?
I think it was, obviously, you know, in 2003, it was still.
There was an exemption at that time?
Yeah, it said all equipment training,
Yeah.
but
And it was
it didn't specifically say what certification or equipment training.
More equipment training, yeah, so I think, I, based on the policy statement, what you're reading, Doctor, my recommendation is it's based on this section that it says in 40519. Because that's what's referenced here under the title.
This says, so this, I have it right now, let's see, what's the date on this one? It's on the website, that's all I know. It says or equivalent training.
Okay. That's
Well, they did that at the same time, they changed the CPR requirements because the state can't endorse or require one specific
Particular
course.
company.
There are other advanced cardiac classes besides ATLS. And obviously, you could take PHTLS instead of ITLS.
Brandon, were there more clarification needed on the mid-level side of things, or is?
We get those calls quite often, so I wonder if we have some new communications going out, that might be worth just stressing that to people, because that seems to be, right, Mike, we seem to get some consistent calls about, I consistently transport to Skylar or to Ira, where I know the bulk of their providers are mid-levels. Can I receive and obtain, orders from those providers?
So we can certainly send out a thing that says
Just a
any
clarification.
provider that meets our policy and the state's policy.
I would just send out the credentialing guidelines that
Right.
they're attached to it.
I think a lot of folks know, but some still don't, so.
Yeah, every few years, they have to go. I think Ross sent a letter out the last.
Yeah,
It
it's
said,
a pretty
yes,
common question.
levels can provide medical control.
I guess I don't understand what the problem is on the EMS side of this about can I or can't I? I mean, because it says right in the policy that the assumption is that you're receiving orders from an authorized credentialed person. So, I mean, there's no liability on the EMS side. I mean, is this more of I don't want to take orders from a PA?
No,
You know,
I think it
that type of
was,
thing,
if I remember,
I'm serious.
Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, John, wasn't there a time when you could only receive
Right.
orders from a physician?
Yes.
Was that ever
Yeah,
true?
Well,
Right, medical community.
correct,
That's
it's a
how- that's the
misinterpretation at the
A
time,
misinterpretation,
that you
okay.
could only receive orders from a physician.
Okay.
And that's why the clarification document, that policy statement 1103 or 1105, whichever one it is, I'm sorry, came out, was to clarify that no, you could, because these people are licensed with the state, they can provide you medical care. Now, it's up to the REMAC. I mean, certainly the REMAC can make a more stringent requirement within your region, and some have done that. You know, where they've said you can receive them from physicians and mid-levels, but not RNs.
Okay.
Well, and
And
that
I'm not
was,
suggesting that, so please don't take that wrong.
you know, but that issue came up at this board a few years ago as well regarding whether a nurse could relay information back and forth on a medical control console or medical command console.
Other than my feeling of stuff can get lost in translation.
Yeah.
Uh,
I believe the
that-
answer was
I-
no at the time.
I mean, why not?
What's the difference between that and,
I mean, that would be my only concern is the doctor gives the order to the nurse and the nurse says it over the radio. I mean, now you're going through 3 different people for
But
this
I-
order, so there's more chance of a mistake instead of a one-on-one conversation. But, you know, in all reality, what's the big deal? I mean,
Right.
I mean,
the
I
physician could
don't,
be in a code and he.
I don't see the big deal on this, is you're calling in and,
I think it goes back to the assumption that when you call in and ask for medical control and they say, you have medical control now,
yeah,
you have medical control.
exactly.
It's on the hospital that's answering the phone to determine who's eligible to answer the phone. It's not on the EMS provider to interrogate the receiver of the phone call, if they're capable.
I really, the only issue with that is if you receive a suspect order, I mean, and then
Right.
you have policies for what you do when you receive a suspect order. I mean, you either repeat the order and verify it, or you just say, I don't think that's appropriate.
Kind of reminds me
You know.
of catch me if you can.
Yes.
So I don't see why this is such a big issue.
All right,
Shall we go on?
let's go on. Let's do it. H is a handout, the draft policy on thrombolytics. This came up because we've had a fair number of transports of people who receive thrombolytics, often going to one of the bigger centers that can do endovascular therapy. And our providers need guidance on how to monitor patients who are receiving TPA or just received TPA. So this is liberally cribbed from Milrems and then the grammar improved.
Yeah, it needs to be cleaned up with the language. Under 3, under when it starts to talk about nicardine, the easiest thing to do is change it to once at goal, titrate to 3 milligrams per hour, period. If blood pressure drops below 1.80, titrate off. You may not want to immediately discontinue it, depending on what you see.
I have a few questions about this, and I'll go after you, Diane.
So with respect to nicardipine and labetalol, they are not in the regional formulary for paramedics. I do recognize this care guideline, however, in the NORAD's region, this is strictly for specialty care transport providers. And that has a separate formulary and a different scope of practice. And I think if you wanted to include this in this region for everybody, at the very least, you'd have to do a protocol revision to the collaboratives to include nicardipine and labetalol in the formulary, and that means.
But even with that, there has to be training associated with this. You can't,
No, I understand
you can't have a regular paramedic that's not a critical care paramedic show up to the ER and take someone 2 hours away and say, okay, here's the thrombolytic that's running. You know,
I can tell
have
you,
a safe drive. I mean,
Require an RN to travel.
well, or it could be a critical care paramedic,
Right.
which is what this protocol was written for. But that was my only question, is this going to be available for every paramedic within the region, or just the critical care paramedics?
I would think probably just critical care paramedics, are the only people that should be transporting.
then it would have to probably be very clearly labeled that this protocol is for use only by, especially care transport, paramedics who have received, in an agency program, or however you choose to tool that up. I know from my time at Skylar, we built an SCT program with its own complete manual, its formulary, its protocols, and then, we had an established program, so it wasn't just the crew shows up and Doc says, here, take some Mobilol for the ride, and go with it. That's the thing we really wanted to not get into. It needs to be some kind of regimented program. And interestingly, I can't take Nick Articuno all day long in my region. Their program is very regimented, very structured. And it's the only other option is to make it available for everybody, or to go ahead and start down the road to develop a regional SCT protocol set.
Rick, Brandon, what do you guys think?
I think both are good ideas. I think we need to move towards maybe a regional SCT program.
There should be a regional set of SCT protocols, like in Irway's right now, because we're already state approved, we adopted the Monroe Livingston critical care protocols, and that's what our critical care paramedics do when they're on transport. So, but because our region doesn't have a set of critical care protocols, so it may be deferred to the state, but it may be just as simple as we in the region, we adopt the Monroe Livingston, or if we find another region that has protocols that better suit our needs, adopt those protocols, then build some sort of program around that. But the bulk of the work is the protocols. So if we can pirate protocols from someplace else and tailor the program to meet our needs, then that's what it is. I mean, we're somewhat restrictive at Airways and, about using these protocols, like the critical care paramedic has to be given the opportunity to speak with either the nurse or the doctor that's in charge of the patient before they take the transport. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can add in.
And when we built the Skylar program, we kind of do the same thing, and we built a credentialing program to go with it, so that providers have to be current with CCNTP or equivalent. Milrose is up the game where they require everybody to have FPC, so, or CCTPC.
The CCP. But also, I think this warrants more discussion, as well as even some things from a logistical standpoint. For example, who's going to be providing the IV pump? And although that sounds simple, it's not always that simple when crew arrives. Right? If the hospital can't forego a 3-channel pump and lend it out for the night, then what do we do? So that has to be addressed as well.
And I would caution that the provider has appropriate training on said pump.
Correct. So that's another logistical issue. Do agencies that want to do this then have to incur the cost of buying their own med pumps and tubing and everything that goes along with that to provide this? Because this isn't something that just is hung in gravity. So I need to understand that.
So right now we do have patients who are getting TPA and then being stuck in an ambulance and driven somewhere else.
I can't speak for any other county, but I can tell you in Chemung County, this is in the Monroe Livingston protocols, that at least in Chemung County, our critical care paramedics are allowed to do that.
Are you grabbing their pumps and just
We
using
have a 3-channel
three-channel?
pump ourselves, but we also, in the protocol, give the critical care paramedic the option of either using our pump or continuing on with the pump that the hospital provides. Because sometimes it's smarter not to switch pumps, just to take the pump. So, but I really think that, if you want to make this region-wide instead of agency-specific, that you have to come up with a region-wide set of guidelines.
In training.
And training. Which I'm all for that.
Yep.
I think that we have to.
We have.
Because this is happening more and more, and we need to make sure that our providers are protected and that our patients are getting the appropriate.
No, but built into that also is that there's not always a critical care paramedic available. We have 4 of them. So, but we have 7 days worth of 24-hour shifts, and I think there's one day a week that we don't have a critical care paramedic working, and then there's also the time that the critical care paramedic is already on another is on event transport someplace. So what do you do then? And these are the types of patients that you don't say, oh, well, we can wait 4 hours for that ambulance to get back from Rochester. They need to go now, so now there has to be some sort of backup built into that, whereas if the service can't provide, if the agency can't provide the level of service that the hospital is requesting, then it can default to the next service. Or it can just be something as simple as the sending hospital then needs to provide a nurse if the level of care is not available. But as we see in the hospitals, that nursing is not as available as it was 10 years ago. So that creates another issue, and I really think that maybe we need to discuss this a little bit further or quicker, because we're getting into a time where helicopters don't fly as much.
And I know this, the nursing shortage, again, the shortage of nurses doesn't absolve also the liability and responsibility on our side.
I can't tell you how many times I've been speaking to a nurse somewhere in the hospital, and they say, well, you don't have to worry about it. If something goes wrong, just turn the pump off.
No.
That's
You
the
should
level
cringe when you hear
that's the
that.
level of thinking that we're dealing with here. And I'm sending a 24 or 25-year-old paramedic with a train wreck 2 hours away, where the closest hospital at certain times during that transport is maybe 30 minutes away. There has to be something more of just turn the pump off. They have to have some sort of education on what these medications can do and what they can't do. How do you react to what type of problems from these medications? The regular street paramedic doesn't have that, where the critical care paramedic does.
But why don't we send a copy of the Livingston protocols out on email so the committee can look at them, and then they're using a different one than the Livingston protocols?
Well, no, that's where I'm.
That's what you gotta do.
No, when I built Skylar's, we actually pared back a lot of the mill runs protocols because some things just didn't really apply to our region. There were some things that just made no sense, but at the end of the day, there's got to be a minimum training level attached to, and a credentialing process attached to.
Well, if we could get a copy of what you're using then too, then we can have a discussion at next meeting.
But I really think if we're gonna pirate somebody else's protocols, we're gonna pirate protocols that are already approved by the state. Because we don't wanna have to go through that entire protocol approval process again.
So the issue with mill runs as it stands, in order to be credentialed for specialty care transport in the mill runs region, you also have to be RSI credentialed.
Which is very restrictive.
Hugely.
Incredibly restrictive.
Which we have no RSI, but
Right, that's what I mean. It's not a matter of simply saying, here, let's use these, we like these. We need to make sure they fit the needs of our region.
right. And there has to be a credentialing process you can have the protocols, but have the credentialing process of who can use these protocols. You can have it different than Monroe Livingston. You don't have to have our providers be RSI certified to use these protocols. It's all about who we say is authorized to use these protocols. And that's how we can tailor it to our region. Let the protocols be the protocols. They're sound medical protocols. They were produced by a very intelligent doctor up there. And so go ahead and use them, but now we need to figure out within our own region who we want to allow to use these protocols.
take the Monroe Livingston and look at them and come back at our next meeting and say, we like, we don't like, and then we can develop a credentialing and training process that goes along with them. I think that seems very sensible, and I think if we can adopt or adapt them, it makes sense, since that's where we send a lot of our patients.
Yeah, you guys were all CCMT,
To use the critical care protocols.
No,
are
no,
able to.
yes.
They're all through the Maryland program.
Right, so,
So-
and originally, when we first went down this road with the revamp, back you were really short, I fought with Dr. Huffner for about 6 months, and we finally got this REMAC to agree to accept UMBC's program at the time as the standard of training that we wanted to go by. We actually even had a course here, we had 2 courses here that we had brought in. So, you know, that's a training program that's already validated, it's already in use by agents. I'm sure that some of your guys are CCMTP providers as well, right, Jim? That seems to be a standard that's workable and doable, and that's the direction we have to continue to move in.
And there's more than the University of Baltimore programs.
There are other programs,
And
yeah.
that are just as good as the University of Baltimore.
There are, but I think, you know, looking at that platform and that amount of training in those areas is appropriate. Like I said, Norton's moved on to requirement of FPC certification, and that's quite expensive.
It's a little over the top, I think.
Well, that's my point. However, it's,
I mean, you shouldn't require a flight-trained paramedic for a ground engine.
So Dylan, I make a motion to table this part of the discussion until we get further information protocols. And as we move on, I have one other question, which is, are there anything else that we have to vote on? Because we lose our quorum when Dr. Hanrahan left. You were correct.
speaking of.
So I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Okay. Right, you are.
What's up, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many do you need?
I guess do you need 5 or 6?
7, 8, 9, 10, there's 10. 10, there's 10 doctors, so if you have 5, you have 4.
Continue.
That's right.
Sorry, guys.
So,
We just did it.
yeah, however, there's a thing about that.
Let's just press on with this agenda, and then can we come back to that later? Is that-
I knew that approved bylaws was on your agenda, so, at the very least, it's got to be brought out.
Where are bylaws on this agenda?
Oh, never mind.
That's the last one.
That was
Those
that.
were, those were the main meetings, but, I assumed it was back on the agenda. I apologize. The issue, remember, you guys wanted to reduce the quorum greatly, at the main meeting? And then we went to the state council a week later, and we found out that you can't exactly do that legally. It's under some obscure, section of New
Open
York
meetings
law.
law.
That and, actually, Dr. Langston called it the general construction law. And it sets statutory forms for public bodies. But we can wait.
No, that's, so we can't have 3,
No, you cannot have 3.
but we still have half of our members,
We do.
so.
However, I think you have to have 51%, so if you have 5 out of 10.
Dr. O'Connor's tall, we're at 51.
That's very
So are you saying that we're not allowed to continue this meeting then? If we are supposed to, if you have to have 51%?
You are the chairman of this meeting.
So I count as an extra 1%, is that?
Well, let me ask you a question. If I were to resign right now, that would change it. And then you have enough.
Or 9.
And then we'll induct you next week.
Don't get me wrong, I
That's a
couldn't
good point,
believe what I
Dr.
was hearing. It just shifts the reality of it.
I think we should just finish this meeting in as orderly a fashion as we can. Moving on, point I, Skylar Volunteer Ambulance submitted their paperwork to move from NEMSIS 2 to NEMSIS 3, but they didn't fill out the numbers correctly, and they, I guess, want to go from NEMSIS 2 to NEMSIS 2. I think that we can provisionally endorse that change pending the correct number being on the form. And again, it's more of a rubber stamp endorsement anyway.
I move that we do that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Fantastic. In an effort to have a naked power grab, I would like to suggest that we add to the bylaws of this committee that the STREMAC chair be empowered to grant interim authority for provisional endorsements and approvals pending the next meeting of the STREMAC, so that if something comes up in July, it doesn't have to wait until September to at least provisionally be endorsed. There's quasi-language to that effect in our policies already. This would just be a more ironclad thing to say.
Well, how reasonable is that? I
I'm
make a motion to accept that.
I don't know about Rob when he takes it.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You will regret it. Provider credentialing on Caddy. We're almost done. Provider credentialing, we rolled out our new provider credentialing policy, and we have received no credentialing reports from any of the agencies thus far. So, Mike, I think we need to send out a letter to all the agencies reminding them of what our policy is and the expectation that their medical directors be submitting the appropriate paperwork to us by December 31st.
Can we send out a copy of the policy?
And resend the policy, of course.
To be frankly honest with you, I don't remember any official receipt of early ambulance of that requirement.
Fascinating.
I'm not saying it didn't happen, I'm just saying I cannot remember an official receipt. I knew it was coming, but I don't remember seeing anything come across.
The official way to say that is, I do not recall.
I do not recall.
Mike, can you please make sure that everybody gets that policy? Thank you. STREMAC membership, you can't resign, it's not allowed. But I did want to look at our list of members here. Dr. Gabriel Garcia Ryan, I don't believe has ever attended a meeting. And is he somebody who is surviving the transition of Corning Hospital? So if he has never attended a meeting and will not be a physician practicing in our region in the near future, I don't know if we need to keep him on the role of STREMAC members, which will help us with maintaining our quorums, because 5 will be greater than 51% in the future. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll second that, by the way. You have to go through protocol.
She seconded it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It was quiet.
Never mind.
I'll do it last.
And Don, we'll wind up with you. What wisdom do you wish to impart to us from home?
General construction law 41. He has read his majority of the seated membership. Just the BLS protocols that you had asked about are on the website. So there is a consolidated document of the collaborative protocols that include the BLS protocols. There's a separate document of just the BLS protocols. Those are posted on our website. So please feel free to go there and pull that down if you'd like to look at that related to that. I also encourage you to keep up with our policy statements. There was a policy statement, obviously, on the BLS protocol stuff, but there was also one on measles. I'm sure that from the hospital standpoint, you're all familiar with measles and the wonderfulness of that. Ebola is continuing to be out there as well. There's still conversation at the CDC level relative to Ebola. We've had a couple of false alarms downstate, but it's certainly a potential opportunity that's out there and available. LMS system is coming. Vital Signs I want to plug, it's close to home this year, so I hope to see you all there. What's that? Your home. Well, it's close to home for you guys too.
Buffalo's not that far.
It's only a couple hours. So Vital Signs is close to home. A lot of new stuff this year when it comes to Vital Signs. There will be, funny you mention it, a critical care track. So that's not for the EMTCC, that's for the paramedic critical care and nursing critical care personnel. So there will be a critical care review class, similar to like a board review class at the position level, that will be done pre-conference on the Thursday and Friday prior to the conference itself. Most people will use that prior to taking the board certification tests that you guys talked about. And there will be a critical care track over the weekend. There's also going to be a networking event that is new this year as well for Vital Signs. So we're really trying to make the program more robust, more user-friendly, and certainly attract all of the aspects and facets of personnel that are involved in the EMS system in the state of New York. It is known as one of the greatest EMS conferences on the Eastern Seaboard, so we just want to make it the #1 on the Eastern Seaboard is kind of the goal. So hopefully we get to see you there relative to that.
What's the cost of that?
The cost,
Like $2.25.
yeah, it's a couple $100. There's a brochure, it's available on our website. I apologize, I didn't have it right at my fingertips here for you, but I will get that to you before you leave. How's that sound? I don't want to hold up the meeting. Ha! I do have that. So the,
Is this conference available on the web?
it is on the website, I'm on it as we speak.
What I mean, the conference itself, will it be live?
No,
Yeah.
no, sorry.
October 27th through 27th.
And if you've never been to Chippewa Street on Halloween weekend, you really need to go.
No, that bar there is actually a really nice place to be.
Which one?
What's the name of it
The
now?
Pearl Street Brewery
Pearl Street Brewery.
is where we're doing the networking conference, so
Yeah.
that's
It's a big
relatively
place.
close to the arena,
Yes.
if you're familiar with the Buffalo, like Sabres arena and stuff like that. And it's actually really good there.
Yeah.
So the cost I have right here.
Well, there's some great conferences too.
$225 is registration on or before September 25th. On-site registration is $300. That's for the full conference. As far as the pre-cons, if you want to take, for instance, the critical care, paramedicine pre-con is a 2-day pre-con, is additional $235. So, but there's leadership tracks, ALS tracks, PLS tracks, so we encourage everybody to come out. That's all I really have on the state side.
All right, I move we're done.
I move. I would second.
Aye.
Did
Bye.
we get a letter back?
Did you guys get your pin for the entrance?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
we actually have.